I'm sick. Hi, my name is Tak, and welcome back to another episode of How To Camera, the YouTube channel where I show you how to camera. Today's episode is going to be on everything else. Yeah. Now, first and foremost, it's been a little while since I've uploaded a video. This YouTube channel was never meant to be a super consistent thing to begin with, so I'm sorry if you were expecting it to be. I don't think you guys were. No, you weren't. Now, the reason why I lumped all these things together isn't necessarily because they're related. It's just that these topics don't take very long to discuss very much. They're just things to be aware of for the most part. Now, we've talked a lot about things to do with the sensor and things to do with lenses and that kind of thing. This next part is going to be more focused on the camera's body. Now, it should be no surprise that since cameras have all sorts of different formats and lenses and sensor sizes, that they should also have different features. And what I mean by that might be, for example, the recording format. Some cameras can only shoot at 1080p, whereas others can shoot at 4K. Some can only shoot for 30 minutes at a time, while others can basically shoot till it runs out of batteries. Now, if you don't care about shooting video, then obviously this portion, about shooting video doesn't really matter. But if you're someone who's in the middle, who kind of wants to do a little bit of filmmaking and a little bit of photography, let me just say 4K isn't super important. I can't watch 4K videos. I don't have a 4K monitor, or I don't think my phone can watch 4K videos either. At least to the point where it's using 4K. It's instead going to be using like 1080p or something. So generally speaking, if you're someone who wants to do what I'm doing, for example, just shoot videos about, tutorials and just talk to the camera, you don't need 4K. 1080p is perfectly fine. I also find it a little weird that I'm only now talking about shooting video when this is a YouTube video. And it's also worth noting that a lot of cameras have what's called a record limit, and that's how much time the camera can record video before it automatically cuts the clip. This A7S II can only record 30 minutes at a time. That's fine for me because my clips don't last very long, because I often have to reshoot my lines because I screwed up 7 times already. So it's fine for me. And even if you're shooting something like a film, you're not gonna have clips that are longer than like 5 minutes, I bet. No one's gonna shoot a movie in 30 minutes in one take. Now, something else that'll differ from camera to camera is how fast the continuous shooting is. Now, continuous shooting is when you hold down the shutter button and the camera takes multiple photos at really quick succession. And it's usually used to capture something in motion. Now, something like this A7S II is only capable of something like 5 frames per second, I think. Whereas something like the X-T3 is capable of 30 frames per second on electronic shutter. That is basically video. Now, something to keep in mind about shooting in continuous is that there is a buffer, or kind of a cooldown. Basically, the camera's only capable of those speeds for a limited amount of time. After that, it'll slow down because it can't save the images to the SD card fast enough. Now, something else that'll differ from camera to camera is the creative styles, or the filters, or whatever they're called. It changes from brand to brand. Now, these filters generally don't look the most natural. Some camera brands do a better job than others, but generally speaking, they're all kind of unnatural. What you're better off doing is taking an image without those effects and filters and instead bringing it into a piece of software like Photoshop or Lightroom. There you'll have more control over the colors. If you want to raise the saturation, you're able to. You want to raise the vibrancy, the brightness, that sort of thing. You're able to do it more closely on a piece of software than on a camera. Now, if you don't have access to a piece of software like Photoshop or Lightroom, or don't have the money for it, that's fine. Use the filters. Make your image look more sepia, or whatever that is. Now, we've talked a lot about how cameras from brand to brand differ from one another. But even within the same brand, the cameras can vary widely. A camera made in 2013 is going to have technology from back then, whereas a camera made today is going to have technology from today. Things like noise reduction, for example, can vary widely. I might have talked about it in a previous video, but noise is those little weird dots that you sometimes see in your photos if you shoot at a high ISO or if it's too dark. That's basically the camera not knowing what colors to put on that specific part of the image. So it just kind of puts a whole bunch of stuff. Now what noise reduction does, obviously, is it smooths out those parts of the image that are, you know, kind of weird looking and screwed up. The noise reduction can only go so far. Don't shoot at high ISO. Don't shoot above 1000 ISO. Put up some lights. And if you don't have lights, open up your aperture. If you can't do that, lower your shutter speed. And if you can't do that, just put lights. Now I've talked a lot about the camera sensors and the science behind using a camera and what makes a camera good. But what's equally as important as the hard specs is the experience of using a camera. You see, cameras are expensive, right? And upwards of $600. The body alone, that is. You're gonna want it to feel good when you use it, right? Otherwise, it'll just sit on your shelf, especially if you're a hobbyist photographer and you're just looking to take some photos here and there. If it doesn't feel good to use, you're not gonna want to bring it anywhere. If it's too big or if it's too heavy, you're not gonna want to use it. And something to think about when you're looking at cameras is the grip. See, if you're going to be holding a kind of heavy digital camera, you're going to want something that's like this. It's got a little bit of a grip here so you can grab onto it more tightly, more comfortably. A lot of cameras, some cameras rather, look a little more like this, where the grip is almost non-existent. And they're generally used to mimic sort of the look and feel of the old analog film cameras. Now most camera brands have already figured out how to make the grips good. But something else that actually does change from camera brand to camera brand is where the dials are placed. And what I mean by that is the dials used to change shooting mode or the aperture in some cases. This A7S II has dials that are in the front and on the back side, and they're meant to be used by your index and your thumb. The problem with those dials, at least for me, is that I never know which one I'm flipping, and also they're a little annoying to use. It requires me to readjust my grip to reach those dials just a little bit, so it throws the shot off a little bit. I really want to try out something like the X-T3, where the dials on the top are all labeled first off, and it really does look like an old film camera. That's what it's, the aesthetic. That's what it's trying to copy. And I'd really like to try it at some point. So if one of you has one, I'd be interested to try it. So I know I've given you a lot to think about if you've watched this series all the way through. And if you have, awesome. That's really cool. But I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you liked the video, give it a like. Subscribe maybe. I don't know what else I'm going to be posting actually. This is sort of the end of the series. There might be one more video coming out, but all the main stuff has been said. I hope you guys have found this video helpful. I hope you guys learned something. If you have any questions, as always in the comments, I'm sure either myself or someone will respond to it. And I think that's it. Bye.